It's easier to be different than it is to be better. Because if you think of it now, if you're producing the same content that's going out but nobody knows the person, you kind of like almost trying to be better rather than different, but difference is better.
And difference comes from personality, who you are,
100%.
Your values, your beliefs, your heritage, your interests. That's why I say it to my guys, I'm like, they're not just buying a program, they're buying a coach. But they're not just buying the coach, they're buying the person behind the coach. Because coach is just one part of your life. That doesn't make
100%
the total you, does it? It's other things that happen outside of work, which I think is a lot of the reasons why people decide to hire a certain person.
Yeah.
So, Taza, when people ask you what you do, what do you say?
So it's kind of like you can take it from two different swings. In the simplest way, it's a male transformation coach, and the types of guys we coach has changed over the years. Now it's career-driven men that want to get into incredible shape, whether it's a flat stomach, six-pack physique, but more so, the thing on top of that is they want to use their body as like the vehicle for success in their life. So it's mostly guys that want to transform, but the reason for them to actually do the transformation is bigger than just the body transformation. It's more like be your best in other parts of your life more so. So it's more career-driven men, because that's kind of something I've seen for me is once I focus on like the body first, that kind of knocks an avenue in terms of other parts of my life. So that's the exact person we coach.
Do you say the same thing to everyone that you meet? Because I know when I meet certain people, and I was chatting to Hannah Chan about this on the last podcast, when I meet certain people, I almost like simplify what I do because they may not get it. So like when someone asks me what I'm in, I'm like, I've got a business consultancy, or I'm in marketing.
100%.
Because like what you explained to me, like I get it.
Makes sense, right?
But like if you're speaking to like some random person at a networking event, like what would you say in that scenario?
I'd say predominantly male transformation coach, personal trainer. Very simple. I think personal trainer is easier to understand than online coach.
Most people
like,
get it. Yeah.
Oh, you provide training plans, diet plans, but we know it's bigger than just that, because that's not the biggest roadblock. But for people that get it, I'm like, these are the types of people we coach. So if it's an Uber driver, I'll say accountant. I'm like, we've not got enough time sometimes.
Completely different. So how did you get to where you're at with this type of market? Did you start with that market, or did that evolve over time? And how long did it take you to get to who you just described? Because you're very like niche right now.
Yeah. So kind of like initially it was, I think we actually met Pure and Spinning Fields. That's how we
did. Yeah.
So it's
that was like
much
3 years ago, right?
3 years, yeah.
Maybe
Seems
more.
like a lot of time.
Maybe 4 years.
3-4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's mostly like anyone and everyone back then. So whoever you get on the gym floor. And I think kind of like more so generalist first, which I think is the right way to do it. You take anyone to get as much experience as you can, work with pretty much everyone, where it's like women over 50, guys and like students, etc. So predominantly it was previously like a generalist. Over time, I kind of got into more of like a physique style, because I found that's was something more I'm interested in. Essentially, it was more of a case of that was kind of where my passion lied. And dabbling both. So previously, generalist, more into like physique, like fat loss, not necessarily muscle gain.
Yep.
Then more into yo-yo dieters, more of a case of people that actually want to get in shape and stay in shape. So it's targeting mostly the guys that were in that place where they'd do the transformation programs, but gain all the weight back. And now it's a case of men that want to get into incredible shape for the first time, but they've actually in that place where they want to sustain that for long terms, but more so think bigger. So it's probably a case of like a generalist more so from me going through the experience of like seeing the value of what style of coaching I really like, and like where I can deliver most value. Can't be niche down overall. I think probably my story was the biggest thing that kind of made the dent, because back then I was that person that was out of shape, didn't prioritize my physique. I saw the negatives, and I found like getting into better shape actually helped with business. And then now we work with like mostly career-driven men that want to almost do the exact same.
Got it. So process of evolution, essentially. You go through
100%.
I'm just going to move that a little bit higher to there. Yeah, just slide it maybe in a bit. Perfect. So a process of evolution.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like then going through that process? Because it can be tricky, right? When you've maybe gone down one path and then you're having to go, oh, actually, I need to pivot and change. Oh, actually, I need to pivot and change again. 100%. What were some of the thoughts that were going through your mind as you were making these shifts and changes?
I think the biggest thing, and probably like the biggest like roadblock for me, was actually realizing who I want to target that I actually enjoy coaching the most. And I kind of found like the difference between, and you probably agree with me on this one, the niche isn't just like career-driven men or a person, is more like an outcome you're delivering. So the outcomes kind of stayed very similar. It's just more so over time, the value in terms of the person I can communicate with and like articulate the best message to, which can change over time. For me, the biggest roadblock was probably like, I'd say if I become more of a specialist, it's kind of limiting my audience over time. It's going to be in that place where if I want to almost speak to everyone and kind of be a bit greedy, and I found I was speaking to everyone, some weeks I speak about this, some weeks the polar opposite. There's a lot of conflicts of opinion, so I found actually it's much easier and much better to be like congruent with the same message. Because nowadays, if I go through my social media schedule, it's pretty much the same things. It's delivering more value and the same. It's kind of focusing on spinning less plates better. So previously, the biggest roadblock was actually understanding the person. The outcome remained very much the same. So there's always been physique over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But it's more so the person obviously started to coach has changed because I've changed. And I think the biggest thing is like your audience grows with you. So I found previously it was like people similar to myself, and as I started to obviously invest into coaching, development,
they saw you were leveling up yourself, so you're attracting maybe a higher level, higher quality type of
I'd say
clientele.
People like that value different things. So previously it was the guy that wanted to party, get in shape, and have like a great social life. Now for me, it's like that's not a big value of mine. It's more like career is the number one thing for me, and it's a case of like how can you be in an above average body but use that to achieve above average things within your career. So I find for me it was more of a case of when I started seeing my values shift, I wanted to communicate that, and actually being completely like okay with being like, actually this is the type of person I want to coach, this type of person I don't want to coach. Initially it was just kind of a case of like if I don't speak to everyone then you're limiting your audience, but I think it's more of a case of over time you kind of realize you actually enjoy coaching these guys more, you can actually get better results. So I find it's actually almost doing disservice to other people that actually want to do it where they party on the weekends, and that's not the type of guy I go for.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this on the way in, was about values.
100%.
Like knowing what your values are as a person, but also as a coach. And then is that reflected in what you do in your business?
100%.
Yeah. And when you're in alignment with your values, it actually feels good.
100%.
It feels like you're doing something that's in congruence with your conscience almost, because your values dictate how you feel. Now, your content creation process, you create some awesome content. You've obviously got a lot of content going out consistently. I see you in the gym, but I see you doing other content as well. What does your content creation process look like? How do you go about it?
Kind of a bit of a backstory. I used to be that guy that do content every single morning. So on a Monday, I know what I'm going to post on Monday.
Last minute content creator.
It's the worst thing ever. So any coach listening to this, don't do your content the same day. I say the latest would be 2 days earlier.
Why not do it?
Because you're probably going to put it out just for the sake of putting it out. So you're probably going to be in that place where you may have to speak about things you normally wouldn't speak about. It wouldn't be as congruent, and probably just making it up and you're thinking of like more junk volume. So like the biggest mistake I made previously was actually doing content the same day. So I'd wake up 3 hours, think of what to post, find the right photo, film the right video, put the right captions. It was like 3 hours. I was like, this is so unproductive.
Here's something I've learned actually from creating a lot of content is content's a creative process.
100%.
So the last thing you want is stress in a creative process. You want to be relaxed. You want to be almost in a state where you feel like you've got enough time and you're not under pressure, because I don't think stress is good for creating content because it's a creative process. So for me, I like to really make sure I'm ahead of schedule when it comes to the content creation process, not necessarily knowing exactly what I'm going to create, but at least have an outline, an idea. So I'm not just showing up and just creating at last minute. So you figured that out.
Yeah.
And then what does it look like now?
Now I found for me, I just didn't enjoy having to do that thing. So it's more of a case of delegate and get someone else to help me out with it. So we work with a video team. So twice a month previously was I think it was every 14th and every 27th. We'd have like 3 hours filming blocked out with a videographer. Because for me, I don't want to have to worry about getting the best lighting, getting the best angles, filming, because it took a lot more time than usual. So it's actually brought me time back. So I think now it's more of a case of having someone that films for me, someone that edits for me, and I just think of the content. So my thing now is actually focusing on like what's going to create the best engagement, what's going to create the best value, and that's my two things now, and then delivering that in the way that's going to obviously relate to the audience and bring them in. So we do ours now as like every 2 weeks, but recently we came back from Miami, which is more of a content trip as well as personal reasons. And what we actually did was like, right, we're going to do filming every single day because we flew out a videographer there, and we mapped out pretty much the rest of the year. So we've got October, November, December mapped out, but that doesn't mean I won't do more because trends will change over time.
Yeah.
So I think what works now will be different to what works in December, because you may have to shift your message or you may want to think about different things. But it's usually delegate the thing you don't want to do what you're really good at, play to your strengths. And now it's probably spend like 4 hours a month in content just by like delegating, hiring help.
So you've got videographer, typically, let's take Miami off the table, where you're going into gym setting.
Yeah.
They're filming.
Yeah.
You've already got the the hooks, the ideas
Yeah,
already prepped in your mind.
pretty much.
You're checking your phone going, right, I'm going to shoot this one next.
Yeah, kind of initially it was scripted out. Now I find if I get the hook, the first sentence, the rest can be flow state.
Yeah.
So like a hook could be, here's steal this strategy if you want to X, Y, Z. Or you're probably self-sabotaging yourself by making this one big mistake and then dial into that one thing. So that now it's more so hooks. I plan out the hooks, but I don't plan out the body of the content.
Okay.
But that's come over time. So previously it was, this I'm going to say first, second, third, fourth. Personally, I just didn't find it, the way I kind of communicated wasn't articulate and it wasn't the best previously compared to when I actually was speaking from the heart to some degree.
Yeah.
Freestyle was so much better.
I think it's about finding what works for you
Yeah.
and the type of content you're creating. If you're shooting
100%.
just straight face to camera, you can just do line by line and then you can just seam it all together so it sounds really nice. But when you're in a gym setting, it's a little bit different. So you've got videographer, and how long are you spending in the gym?
Probably, we normally get it done within an hour, and then after that I'm just kind of making things off the top of my mind. It gets unproductive, so we leave in like an hour and a half.
Okay, so you do
So
about an
probably-
hour of just back-to-back
Pretty
content,
much, yeah.
various different things that you've come up with, and then from that hour worth of gym time, content creation, how much pieces are you getting off the back of that one?
25
pieces.
around that. So you
And they're in
kind
real
of,
clips. Or
they're in real clips, yeah.
you
So
doing any images?
images, we can't take screenshots of stills.
Okay, and do you use that at
So-
all in like carousels on Instagram, or do you just go straight reels? For everything?
Right now I'm doing straight reels, but I'm going to shift that into like real carousel, real carousel, real carousel.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like, I'll actually dive into that in a second, but more so it's take the reels, get someone to edit them, schedule them in advance, kind of know what your marketing calendar is going to look like. So I know for me, mid-month is all value. The first week, the last week is more selling. So it's more like speak about your program, deliver like solutions to outcomes. In between, it's like steal this, do this, here's value, save it. So kind of like more so is related to reels predominantly, as opposed to more so like stills or pictures. But with the algorithm changing, like something I would say is like Instagram's favoring more personal content nowadays. So like they kind of want to make it like Facebook. And I would say your thoughts on this as well, where it's like they don't just want to have it where it's, you know, the bells and the whistles or this great value, but actually the people want to get to know the person. So what I'm starting to do now is like every second, every third post is more like personal or program up pictures of me, something like on my iPhone, because I think you can have like the best quality of videos, but sometimes people just want to see like
It's
a
too
raw
polished.
photo.
Yeah. I know what you
so-
mean. And it's interesting you mentioned Facebook, because most of my business actually comes from Facebook.
Interesting.
And Facebook and Instagram are completely two different things.
Yeah.
People know that they can link Instagram to Facebook and they can push
Repost it.
Instagram content to Facebook. But what they don't know is that's the worst strategy, because Facebook is completely different. On Facebook, for example, it's a single image of just you, not super high definition, with a bit of text that typically outperforms most things. The only thing it doesn't outperform is a colored background post. Do you know those colored background posts where you can like put limited characters? Those are like the all-time best performing piece of content on Facebook from my data over the last 2.5 years worth of looking at data, right? And so like it's about knowing the nuance of the platform. But I do agree that even on Instagram, in a world where there's AI, in a world where there's a lot of
100%.
fakery, people are looking for authenticity. And so if you can get that across in your content, I think it can do really, really well.
I think here's a quick story as well. It's probably like the biggest value piece I got from making content, obviously kind of standing out in the industry. So it was actually from Corby. He'd been like a group call, a part of a mastermind I was in, and he just said, he's super silent. He was like, all right, cool, who's the best PT here? And there was like 20 people in the group. Everyone was like, shit, that's a big question. Nobody's going to say it's me.
Yeah, no one wants to look like their ego is, is big than it is.
And he was like, oh, so you're all probably the same then? And everyone was like, shit, we're kind of feel like we, you know, someone's pulled our pants down. It's like, okay, cool. Put a 1 in the chat if you put squats in your program. Everyone put a 1. Put 1 in the chat if you put deadlifts in your program. Everyone put a 1. Bench press, 1s, chin ups, most people put a 1. He's like, oh, so you all do the same thing then? And the point he was trying to get across is that it's easier to be different than it is to be better. Because if you think of it now, if you're producing the same content that's going out, but nobody knows the person, you kind of like almost trying to be better rather than different, but difference is better.
And difference comes from personality, who you are,
100%.
your values, your beliefs, your heritage, your interests.
Yeah.
That's why I say it to my guys. I'm like, they're not just buying a program, they're buying a coach. But they're not just buying the coach, they're buying the person behind the coach. Because coach is just one part of your life. That doesn't make
100%.
the total you, does it? It's other things that happen outside of work, which I think is a lot of the reasons why people decide to hire a certain person, not just for their capabilities, not just for their skill set, not just for their transformations, but also because they connect with that person and they vibe.
It's relatability, right? People buy off people they like. So it's more of a case
can relate to as well.
That's it. So it's like someone that's, let's say the bodybuilder, for example, people may want to go down that route and do that thing that they've done, and they may relate to that person's values and where they spend their time. Someone else that has a family, someone that's a dad, they need to showcase that. So for me, it's always a case of like having like blips of your personality, whether it's stories or posts, kind of having that in place. But you kind of want to understand, like, you also want to share parts of yourself in terms of social media, so you're not just like another personal trainer, because then you're going to be almost trying to be better than other people. But it's easy to be different massively.
I agree with that. Plus, you'll find is that type of content drives the most amount of interest and engagement, which then bleeds through to your other content and gets you more exposure to your value and your niche content.
100%. Yeah.
Which a lot of people overlook. They're like, well, what's the point in posting it if it's not valuable? Well, it drives interest to your valuable content because it has mass market appeal.
I think the biggest thing for me was realizing, like, actually my personal posts drive more engagement than my value post. And the reason why is because actually people see a different side of what your content looks like. So before I do a launch, the day before is like a very personal post, like a picture of me, gets the most engagement. And then the next day is, oh, that post did good. So the next day is going to do even better. So it's kind of like, you want to strategize around that. It's a social media strategy, but also you kind of like enjoy using social media as like showcasing yourself, right? So I think with content, you can do all these bells and whistles. Obviously, videographer, I'd highly recommend, because you don't want to spend time actually like having to film where you can. Start to delegate things you don't necessarily enjoy that's taking a lot of time, and then start to look at how can I deliver value and how can I do it where it's doing it in less time and being more efficient with that. But then having parts where you're like, all right, cool, Saturday, just post something about yourself. Just post like a what's on your mind, something you learned this week, how's your training going, showcasing like your life behind it is quite powerful. I think the main thing I'd say is like, and my own coach taught me this, is like teaching education with utility. Whereas like give them education, but give them something they can do afterwards. So it's not
I think
just
like immediate application is going to be more beneficial to your audience because it's going to be more valuable. Versus just teaching someone. At the end of the day, it's social media. They're not actually there to learn. They're there to be entertained.
100%.
Like most people are not on there to learn, unless it's YouTube. YouTube's different.
YouTube's good.
Yeah, YouTube. I do teaching on YouTube because it's a learning platform. I do a lot of my own learning from YouTube a lot of the time. It's like when you want to learn how to do something, how to on YouTube. But on Instagram, it's more about how do you like hook people in? How do you get their interest? And how do you like get their attention in a very small window of time to then maybe get them to the podcast or maybe get them to the YouTube or the long form content. But also is what I like to try and do is edutainment.
Interesting.
So it's educational, but it's entertaining at the same time. So it's almost like education disguised as entertainment.
Got it.
Because it's a platform where people are looking to be entertained, not necessarily educated. So if you can blend the two. So I would say like, you know, the gym stuff that you do where you're in the gym, that is somewhat entertaining because we're not just watching you in a room speak about training. You're actually training, in the gym. Speaking about training. And so you're going to distract us with the background, with people watching, with like the stuff that you're doing. And I've seen that, right? If you take two pieces of content, one's just in a room with just a backdrop speaking about X, but then you go into the setting where you can actually do X and speak about X, it's going to perform better because 100%. It's going to be more entertaining for the viewer. 100%.
It's like if you're going to speak about the gym, be in the gym. If you're going to speak about food or like carbs, for example, go into like a supermarket, do it there. But you kind of want to have it where it's relevant to the thing you're speaking about. So if it's just about here's 3 ways to lose body fat in your room every single time, probably not going to pull as much. Whereby if you do that in a gym setting, where you're like, here's 3 ways to train to lose body fat, hook him in, then it's going to be a little bit more relevant because you see this person's probably got a lot more confidence. I look up to him and they kind of see you're actually out there and doing it rather than be that person that's in their room.
You just said something really powerful there actually, is like if you get into the environment, number one, that represents what you're speaking about, it'll do better. But more importantly, if people see you speaking about stuff in a setting that most people won't speak about those things, you've just elevated yourself.
100%.
Because it's actually hard, I imagine it was at the beginning to actually shoot
I'll dive into
content
that, yeah.
because you were probably thinking, what do people think?
Oh,
what if I
100%.
mess this up?
Yeah.
Like, am I being judged? And you probably felt pretty paranoid, I imagine, when you first started it. Is that right?
So here's a bit of a backstory. So my first video shoot, do you know Ben Mark?
No.
Photographer, videographer. I worked with, he's in London, Crawley.
Okay.
We did a filming shoot. It's in Sheffield. I don't remember the exact place it was. We did it for 4 hours, got no content. I just kept on looking at people walking
So
past
he came
me
all the way
and-
from London up to Sheffield to shoot content. You pay this
And-
guy and you get nothing.
Yeah. So like the whole thing was like, I was kind of I was scripting it. So I was saying things I wouldn't necessarily say. So that was the first
forcing
thing.
it a little bit.
Pretty much. I was trying to be what I wasn't, basically. Second thing, it was always the case I didn't have enough reps. My first ever video took 6 hours to actually upload. Now we do 25 in an hour.
Yeah.
So I think
This is important for people who are maybe listening on this conversation to know that, like, creating content is not easy when you don't have reps.
100%.
We're about to run like a 3-day video challenge inside of our mentorship community just to help people get reps.
sick.
Because like going and posting videos on social in public is actually quite a big thing for most people to do. Like if you just spoke to like 10 of your mates who are not in marketing or online or not in social media, I bet none of them post videos of themselves speaking online. It's
100%.
actually a skill that has to be developed.
It's
Most
a good
people
skill,
are not
though.
doing it.
Yeah, it's-
90% of the population, if not more, do not speak to a camera and post it on social media. It's a skill you've got to get reps on to
100%.
feel confident doing. And the confidence only is going to come from repetition and
100%.
competence, right?
Yeah. I think kind of like as a business owner, your business is like probably the best form of personal development. So when you get better video, you get better with other things and it's skill acquisition, right? So I think one thing I'd always, if I was going to look back and actually take myself back, I'd be like, let's do a lot more of this. Because I think we did a video shoot. I was like, our video's not for me. Let's leave for 6 months. And I kind of did my second one. I was like, actually, I'm not giving up on that. And it took a little bit more time. But I think if you, the moment you start filming, just don't stop, then you'll accumulate a lot more reps and you'll be consistent, which most people aren't. I definitely think having some form of challenge initially with like videography, where it's like go to a gym, film something, even if it's B-roll, just go and do something like that.
When you're shooting in a gym though, do you find the background noise like can be difficult to work with? Because a lot of gyms are loud.
Can be, yeah. So I usually use gyms in Manchester / Wigan or Liverpool area, and most gyms I use now aren't as loud, but previously it was. Like if you've been to Santos, that's very loud and very dark. So you kind of know in what atmosphere you're getting yourself into. When you see other people in the gym at the same time, if you're in the right gym, they really don't care. Whereby if you're in a pure gym, they're like, oh, he's filming, etc. And it's like, kind of being in the right environment is a good thing to actually be like, actually, it's a good gym. I like the community. I like the vibe. It's a good place to film. But in terms of it being too loud, not as much as I thought, to be fair. There's some gyms in Miami where it's super loud. I was like, I can't film, I can't speak, let's just go outside and do it there. But you kind of want to know what environment you're going to obviously do the content in, because then you actually be quite comfortable in the actual environment itself.
So let's switch gears into coaching, right? Because this is your skill set, right? It's not a content creator, even though that's part of the process. Coach, right?
Yeah.
But you've been doing transformations online for what, 3+ years?
I've been coaching for 6 years and doing transformation 3 to 4.
3 to 4 online, yeah. So 6 years worth of like coaching experience, personal training experience, doing transformations online for 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you will look back at the last like 12 months of delivering transformations, like what principles would you say have led to you getting the results you get? If you were to try to break it down into like 3 things, what would you say like move the needle the most with you and your clients?
That's sick. So first one is you're not giving them a body, you're giving them a new lifestyle. I think that's the biggest thing. You're like kind of giving them a new identity. So I think the first thing we look at is like, who does this person want to become? And I kind of visualize that now. And like, this is the person you're going to become. You're going to be that fit dad or that high performing mother or that person that's in business, that's in sick shape, that wake up early, that does these things. So it's kind of like the first thing you're looking at is giving them like a new lifestyle, new identity. That to me is going to always be a work in progress, but you kind of want to see that for them and actually articulate that to them. So like they don't just come to you for the body transformation, they actually come for like a new way of living to some degree, because that's going to keep them there for long term. Second thing is actually when it comes to results, I think the main thing is believing in your clients more than they believe in themselves.
Borrowed belief.
Yeah, it's more of a case of like, I found for me when I was receiving coaching, that was the biggest thing for me. And I realized that like every single time I get a client now, I'm like, you know what, you are going to succeed, like it is going to happen. Like I've got no doubt in that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be selling them on the journey. But more so, it's a case of that believing they actually will succeed and actually they'll get there. And then the final thing I think when it comes to getting coaching results is having like a future focus. I think the reason our retention is at 18 months plus is because obviously we have a future focus in terms of not just the transformation and the before and after, but what's past that.
Yeah, the
So having
bigger journey, so to speak.
a bigger vision. And I think the main thing you want to do is really know, not necessarily the outcome, think of it as like kind of like highlighted marks, right? Like little dots where you're like, cool, you got lean, great, you did a photo shoot, got lean,
Yep.
did this. And it's kind of like, how can you paint the client journey to be bigger? Because if you think of it now, and you probably agree with me, how long have you been training for? Let's just say.
Like training myself.
Yeah.
Since I was 18, so I'm 35. So I'm not great at maths, but
yeah, 17.
It's a long time.
17 years. So
exactly,
it's like,
right. It's a long time.
It's kind of like you've obviously been doing it 17 years. I've been doing it for like 10 years around that time. And it's an infinite game. It's not a finite game. It's not just an outcome. So when you can see that through your own experience, actually, what's keeping you trained all this time?
Yeah, well, interestingly, on that point, I'm just about to do High Rocks, right, in London on
Things like that.
25th, right? And I had to do that in order to stay on it with my training because I've trained for so long. Like you just pointed out, 17 years. I've done building muscle, leaning out, getting fit, getting like shredded. I've done it all. And the reason I've done it all is because I wanted new challenges. And then I kind of recently in the last 12 months was like, well, what do I do next? I don't just want to keep going and lifting. I don't want to run. I need something that's going to challenge me, something different. And that's why I was like, you know what? High Rocks is something that I could do. And it's something realistic I could fit into my schedule in terms of the training. And since I like set that as a goal and set my sights on it, my training, my nutrition, everything's been more dialed in because I've got a purpose. And I'm like going to book the next one as soon as I finish the first one because I know it's going to keep my head in the game.
That's quite big you said that, because I think if I was going to give a point four, it'd be like, are you familiar with like the 5 human needs?
Yes. There's
So,
actually
like,
6 that I'm
Is it
aware
6?
of. Yeah.
Nice, there you go.
I got this from Tony
Learn some
Robbins.
Nice. Learn something new every single day. Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's like growth is like a big thing you want in your program.
Yeah.
You want belonging.
Mm-hmm.
You want novelty.
Mm-hmm.
You want certainty, uncertainty.
Yeah.
And what's the 6th one?
Significance
Nice.
or contribution.
Contribution.
Yeah.
growth,
Contribution's probably the top thing where you don't typically get there first. That's once you've
Interesting.
you've achieved a lot. So contribution in a program could be supporting other people in the program, or contribution could be charitable things.
Yeah.
That's
like
contribution.
Significance as well, like you mentioned. Is like
Significance is when like you would recognize your client as doing a really good achievement. They would
100%.
give them a sense of significance.
That keeps them staying there as well. Because if you think of it, if they're not getting results, they're not growing.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to be there in the same place. If there's not novelty, they're like, oh, it's just the same thing I can do by myself.
Which is also variety, novelty.
Kind of the phase you mentioned, where it's like you've got lean, got shredded. Obviously now you're doing High Rocks. You kind of mentioned different, and that's kind of what you want to do. So you don't want it to do the same thing every single time. So having novelty, and then obviously a period of uncertainty where you're like, actually this is going to work. Uncertainty because that's challenging. It keeps.
Yeah, that's good when you have those dips and you're like, actually I've put on a bit of weight, or actually I'm not as fit as I thought. That's also healthy in my opinion because that checks you.
Yeah.
And you're like, actually, I need to up my game.
100%.
Because I had that recently, like last couple of weeks, I'm like, I'm actually not as prepared as I should be. So I had the uncertainty of, am I even going to be able to show up and not embarrass myself in this High Rocks? And so I was like, now I need to up my game. I need to be certain that I'm training enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so like, I think uncertainty is also a good ally in pursuit of personal growth.
Yeah. It's like you can't challenge and you've got support at the same time. So you got support and challenge, and that's kind of 2 pillars for like personal development. So I'd say those 3 plus the 5th one. The 4th one would be like understanding human needs and keeping that in your program. Because when you understand that, it's like the human needs and people want to stay, and also the results you get are quite killer because they stay long enough, they get a good result, they're growing all the time, and that's exactly what a transformation is all about.
Love it.
So boom,
all right,
let's do this.
Where can people find more about you?
So I'm pretty much on all social media platforms, predominantly Instagram. So it's ir.taza. Someone stole my full name somehow. YouTube, Irtaza Farooq, and LinkedIn is the exact same.
Didn't know you had a YouTube.
So
how long has that been going for?
Kind of doing podcasts probably like the last year.
Nice. YouTube's is a tough game.
It's
barrier to entry is a lot higher.
I kind of see it as that documenting my whole life because sometimes I kind of put clips to myself. Like I was in Miami last week and put like a video to myself. I was like, I'm going to watch this in a year's time, put it in private videos.
Yeah, that's cool.
Things like that's quite cool. I kind of use it as that and also like a documentation. So like a podcast like this, watching it back in like 10 years time, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's like you're documenting your life in public.
It's more selfish
for yourself, but also people can glean something from it. But yeah, respect for the YouTube game, because like it's a lot of work. A lot of people don't know what goes into a YouTube, and we don't even do it at a super high level, but we're doing a podcast now a week. We're doing like a solo one a week, and we're doing that on 2 channels, and we're paying almost like £100 per video, and it's a lot of time that goes into it. So like you've got to spend a lot if you're doing high production,
100%.
and you've got to spend a lot of time
investment.
And I think that's why it's a good strategy, because most people won't do that and are not prepared to do it, because the following or the subs are going to grow so slow that it's so demotivating that most people give up. And I like that game where I know people are going to give up, because I know I can win a game like that. Same with podcasting, because I've been podcasting for 5 years. Podcasting is the most demoralizing piece of content you can create, because you don't really get any feedback. You may see like downloads and listens, but no one's saying, oh, that was a great show typically, or no one's necessarily giving you an applause or giving you like comments on your podcast typically, 100%. Because they're buried in the podcast platforms. So like you're just churning out this content and you're like, are people liking this?
Listening.
Yeah. Sometimes you get the odd messages here and there, but unless you're like mega big in terms of a podcast, like you don't really get any feedback. And that's why most people don't make it to 10 podcasts. Most people don't succeed in podcasting. I think there's a crazy number, like 95% of them don't make it past the first 10 episodes.
Mad. Yeah, it's evergreen as well, right? Because
it is evergreen as well.
Instagram, you put a reel out today, it's gone tomorrow, unless people scroll and find it.
Unless you recycle it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't do.
Change the captions, put it out again.
Exactly, right? Or slice and dice it and create a different hook.
There you go. It's also like evergreen's going to stay there forever.
And, that's a good thing. It's an investment.
Yeah.
Awesome.